What is up, folks? Today we are checking out this new electronic viewfinder from Portkeys, the LEYE.
Check it out.
Now, as you can see here, I have this configured on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, and that's thanks to this little EVF monitor mount from Neatsy. So this is comprised of two little baby 15mm rods and three different little 15 rod clamps, right? So we have one that can be bolted to your camera cage, and then they have this other one which is a 90-degree angle adapter, and then this really cool one which is a 15mm rod clamp with a NATO rail clamp on the other end. And that goes great with one of my favorite features of the LEYE, the built-in NATO rail on the bottom. So this is awesome. If you guys have been on the channel for a minute, you know in all of my past rig builds, I am a huge fan and user of all things NATO. So this is awesome. It opens us up for a lot of more mounting options. If NATO isn't really your thing, then they also have these 3/4 20s, and as you'll notice, they do have airy locking points for just more stability. It has 4 programmable function buttons on the top, which is really cool. On here on the side is your 4 menu buttons. We will be diving into this very shortly. I will be showing you what it's like if you were to have your own eyeball pushed up against this LEYE, because this is a really rad unit. But before we get to that, I want to keep looking at what's on the outside. One thing else that I really like about this is that there is a physical on-off button. I'm not a big fan of those push and hold for 5 to 10 seconds and wait for your tool to turn on or off. I just don't have the patience for that. I love a physical toggle on-off switch, so I'm glad that Portkeys went that route with the LEYE. Over here on the other side, you'll see where you have an HDMI. This is HDMI only because this is a more affordable option for an electronic viewfinder, so just keep that in mind. But one cool thing is that Portkeys does include this 90-degree elbow adapter, so it keeps your HDMI cable streamlined on there. I really like that. And then if you use something like these little super thin Camvate HDMI cables, which are 4K 60p compatible, it just makes for a really nice minimalist rig. Speaking of minimalist rigs, however, you will notice that there's nowhere to mount an onboard battery. So the only way to power this thing is with an external battery brick. So you got to keep that in mind. You can't go super minimalist with this guy. The cool thing is that Portkeys does include this little barrel adapter to P-tap cable. So that's nice because those usually run around 30 bucks. As you'll see here also, you have a USB port, and that's for upgrading the firmware or importing your LUTs. Now, what's cool about this little monitor on the inside is that it is 300 nits, an 1100:1 contrast ratio, and it does accept a 4K 30p signal. So that's pretty awesome. Now, 300 nits doesn't sound like a lot nowadays, but that's because this is an EVF. If you think in terms of a movie theater, back when people were still going to the movie theaters are generally 300 nits. So the fact that this thing is 300 nits is pretty dang good, especially when your eyeball is that close with an 1100:1 contrast ratio. That is sweet. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but the screen on the inside is 2.4 inches. Before we jump in there though, we want to check out the diopter. They have a nice red oak diopter on here. It's got a really good distance range. It's really nice, and I've even been using it with my glasses, so that's an option as well. Now, the only thing that I'm not too hip on is this. I am and I am not. So let me talk about what is kind of nice about this. So it's just a little Velcro thing. They have this. You can actually, put this on here, and you can pull this down and attach it up under here. This is nice, but the one thing is like, sorry, I keep ripping that on and off, but this is not very high quality. This is just Velcro and foam, so I don't foresee this lasting very long on a real working day. This would work for one shoot. But here's the cool thing about this, and I would broach this topic to Portkeys, and for all I know, they're already working on this, but it would be cool if they had like a little pack of like 15 of these, right? And they sell them they sell the packs individually. That would be cool. That would be something I would purchase, because also in our current state of affairs, safety is a thing we need to think about. And I have been on sets where I was working as the BTS videographer, and I've seen DPs catch pink eye from rental houses from the EVFs, right? So a lot of that has to do with not proper sanitization from the rental houses, you know, wherever they're getting the Alexa from or whatever, but I have seen guys get pink eye from EVF, so that's just something to think about. But what I like about it is once you're done with a shoot, rip it off and throw it away because you have more. Now for my super ultra DIY guys, I'm sure it would be no thing for you to get a little piece of foam and Velcro and cut this out and make it yourself, but I'm not really one of those kind of guys that like to make stuff like that, but it wouldn't be hard, all things considered, but I would be more hip on just purchasing a little pack of these, so that might be something for Portkeys to think about. Not to mention, you know, with someone like me who's working very quickly, and sometimes I just grab and go, I don't foresee that this is going to get tore up really fast. But now what I want to do is jump in here on the inside. You'll see this crazy rig I set up with my GH5, and the little pancake 20mm lens just worked out perfect for this. And I was able to send out the GH5 signal to my Blackmagic HDR Video Assist to record this, and this is cool. So now let's dive in here and look at all the awesome tools. There are a lot of pro tools available on this LI. It's basically like having a shrunken down BM5 and then making it in EVF. So let's jump in and I'll show you everything it has to offer from the inside. So I'm just going to start tapping the top 4 function buttons, starting with function 1. And you'll see there function 1 is the zooming. Okay, so you have the zoom function there. Function 2 is the focus peaking, so there you can see that turning on. It's on right now and then turned it off. And then function 3 I have set to false color. So there's the false color, and then function 4, sorry, is the waveform. There you'll see it down in on the bottom of the screen there. So yeah, and like I said, all 4 of those function buttons on the top are programmable. So now let's jump into the menu here on the side and we can check out. So we know we can jump in here and look at our guides. So we have all kinds of different guide settings. This is much like, you know, the features that we see on the Portkeys BM5, which is really cool. I like that they include this one here, the 9x16. That's always cool to have a reference for that. You know, for all the social media stuff that's being done. So it's nice that they have all of these guides. And then of course you can set a custom one too, so that's really cool. So this is a lot of the same stuff that we have seen in the past on the other Portkeys monitors, and it's all in here. You have crosshairs, you have grids, you have your guide masks. Okay, let's go back, and here's our video config. So you can completely, you know, set this monitor up however you want it to be, brightness, contrast, chroma. So you can literally calibrate this Portkeys viewfinder. It also has anamorphic mode, which is rad. So you have all the different 2x35, 2 times, 185, 166, 1.5, 142, 133, 1x. Yeah, so that's really cool, man. I love that that they have that. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, so now let's go back, and here you have your system config. And here's all the different, you know, configurations for your system. I like that you have the option to, the waveform source can be based off of the LUT, which is in the monitor. And then here, you know, you can import the LUTs via the USB port, so that's always nice. Function setup, and this is where you can tap in, you can assign different things. So this is what you have available for your different functions: zooming, Luma waveform, histogram, underscan, the zebras, false color, peaking, grids, crosshair, guides, HV delay, check field, backlight, anamorphic, tint, sharpness, chroma, contrast, brightness, LUT, audio meters, zooming. So there you go, we're back to the beginning now. So you have plenty of awesome options that you can set for each of the 4 functions. Yeah, and then of course in here is where you can upgrade the firmware. So lots of cool things, lots of cool functions, lots of cool tools, really pro level stuff available here on this Portkeys monitor. If you want to see some of these things, which maybe I was kind of interested in actually, is this actually kind of interested in this HV delay. Not sure I know what that is. So function 1, HV delay, and there we go. Interesting. So you have horizontal or vertical delay syncing. Interesting. I don't have any experience of using that, but that's available for you on this Portkeys LEYE EVF. Very interesting indeed. So that one kind of got my attention there. Obviously, all these other things are available for us. So now I'm on function 2, which was set to focus peaking. So I can go in here, and if I press and long hold, then I'm able to change the parameters of that specific function or tool. So you get a lot of cool things that you can do to change, for instance, your focus peaking. Here you have grayscaled middle, grayscaled high, all black, original, black and white. Yeah, so that's pretty rad. So you have the option to fine tune every single tool that is in this monitor. I'm always highly impressed with their monitors. And last but not least here, I was inspired because if you guys are following the channel, you know that I have the red Komodo now, and I was inspired by some old photos of some old DSM-C2 bodies where I see guys rocking the 7-inch red LCD touch monitor along with the red EVF Bomber EVF, and I thought, hey, I'm gonna do that for the Komodo just for the sake of this video. Everyone relax, I know it's a little overkill, but I just thought it was interesting to, if you wanted both EVF and onboard monitor, you could still do it. However, you do need a monitor that allows you to do pass-through, like cross-convert from SDI to HDMI, because again, this is only HDMI only, and the Komodo is SDI only. But thanks to the 12G HDR Video Assist, you can cross-convert from SDI to HDMI. So for those of you that aren't big proponents of an EVF, I've always been like a fan of them, but it's really hard for me to adopt these into my workflow. Way back in the day, I had one of the original Zacuto EVFs, and I used to try to use it when I was shooting on the original Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. I say try because a lot of times I just ended up flipping up the plastic part of the EVF and just using the little mini monitor as it was. And then if you guys remember last year, I was using the Sidefinder with the Small HD 502. So, you know, it's cool. I love the idea of it, but it's so hard for me to adopt it into my workflow. I don't know what it is, but here's why I really respect the EVF. One is because when you put your eyeball in here, you literally have to close your other eye, and it forces you to focus on only the shot, right? You're only now seeing what's from frame left to frame right, and I really love that. It forces you to focus on the composition and the lighting. The other thing what I love about it is it gets other people off your back without having to say a word, right? Me personally, I'm not a fan of people standing over my shoulder watching me work, or especially, you know, looking at the monitor when things aren't ready to be shown yet, if you know what I mean. You know, if you're still in the process of lighting, I don't like it when people come around and start, you know, silently judging what they're seeing on the monitor when I'm still in the process of creating the look, right? So having the EVF kind of forces all those people to go off and go to Video Village or get on their own monitor. I've shown on the channel here, there's plenty of ways for everyone to have their own monitor on set nowadays. So that's what I like about this, right? It kind of allows you to become one with the camera and not have any outside interference. So there you have it, folks. I have links to these things down in the description below. I encourage all of you to do your own research, check it out for yourself. As always, I have links down there to my kit link for all of the DIY gear that I use on paid jobs and personal jobs. And speaking of jobs, if you're interested in any of that or seeing more of the behind the scenes world of what it's like being a startup filmmaker in LA, the Dog Times Patreon is something you may be interested in. So there's links down there. I put out an exclusive members only video once a week, and we have our little own private Discord chat. So that's a little filmmaking community all on its own. So I encourage you guys to check that out if that sounds interesting to you. If not, if you're new here, the best way to support the channel is just tap that subscribe button. And I hope you're all having the best holiday that you can have, all things considered. And with that, I will see you next week.